Okay, that one's on. I have to get the microphones on.
You need to change the...
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay,
We
good.
need to change the flash drive.
Oh, okay.
Excuse us a minute. How do we do that?
I think you just pull out one and put the other
Well,
in.
they're both in there, aren't they? Here he comes, he'll fix it.
Technical difficulties.
Good.
Okay, well, we will be having a drawing for some chocolate items at the end. If you don't have a ticket now, we'll catch you at the end. So with that, I'm Howard Peters. This is my wife, Sally. And yes, we've been married 52 years. It was really easy. Whoever left took the kids. Okay. So if you came for a very serious talk on the chemistry of chocolate, you're going to be disappointed. This catches the tops of a lot of mountains for chemistry, history, biology, economics, and I'm going to cut across the mountaintops, and you can go on the web and go into the valleys and see what I'm missing. We will have a cocoa pod. This is where chocolate comes from. They're usually more colorful than this, but this one is really shriveled. And as far as the drawing is concerned, the top prize will be a 10-pound bar of bittersweet chocolate. But you have to stay to the bitter end. So with that, can you hear me? Okay, this came from the other grandparents. Listen carefully.
I love chocolate.
Are there any questions? So with that, we've been doing this now for 10 or 12 years, and it's been a lot of fun. Every time we go somewhere, we learn something new, and it gets added in pieces as we go along the way. There'll be facts and there'll be fiction. So if you think we're not giving you the full story, go to the web, and we'll have a card here for Steve, and you can get a hold of us with it on the internet. How did it all get started? I grew up on a farm 80 miles from Hershey, Pennsylvania. And yes, we could smell the chocolate stink on occasion. But about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we put together a talk for our local chemistry chapter in the Silicon Valley. And one thing led to the other, and we ended up the Valentine's Day story in the Mercury News, and this has rolled ever since. We keep adding to it. We can talk to grade school kids, high school kids, and even retirement communities, just changing the text a little. So what are we going to do today? We're going to learn some ancient history, some recent history, some biology, some chemistry and biochemistry of Theobroma cacao. And that's the name of chocolate. And Theobroma from the Greek translates food of the gods. There'll be some health aspects. There's resources. I have a trivial mind. I love trivia. And then we'll have the raffle. So with this, in the Amazon basin in Ecuador, next to the Andes, is where the cultivation of cacao started as a food. It was only a drink for thousands of years, and then moved up through the Isthmus of Panama into Central America and then Mexico. We know some of the people from there, the Olmec, not much, the Mayan, a little more, but mostly from the Aztec. You have to understand it, with the heat and humidity in those parts of the world, things don't last very long unless they're in stone. The Aztecs continued until 1500. About 1520, I think, Cortez came in and completely destroyed the Aztec culture. And for about 150 years, the use of chocolate as a drink or as a food was a trade secret within the Catholic Church and the aristocracy in Spain. They kept it to themselves. So this is a Mayan pot. There are people at Hershey that put this and found traces of cacao in the cracks in this pot. And this is a statue of Quetzalcoatl, who was the Aztec god who, according to mythology, brought them the cacao plant and how to use it. Now, it's interesting, he also said that he did a number of other things, but he also said that he would leave them to work with the plant and then come back at a later time. And this was important for Cortez because the Aztecs thought it was their god coming back with ships, guns, and horses. Chocolate is a fragile tree, fragile plant, grows in this area, must have the right humidity, temperature, and soil conditions, and a number of other things. I just happen to like this because Peters is in the name. So in the processing, the growing occurs, let me go back. Growing in third world countries, harvesting, fermenting, drying, all of this is handwork. 1/2 of the raw cacao in the world comes from the Ivory Coast, a small country in Africa. Kenya and Ghana make up the rest. So over half of the raw cacao comes from Africa, and they have some problems. After roasting, you remove the shell, get the nibs, and they're ground, remove the fat. How many people have seen Ghirardelli Square where they have that those granite blocks going? What they're doing is getting the particle size down of the cacao. If it gets below 30 microns, your chocolate bar won't taste gritty, and it'll release more of the flavors. I'm sure you've all had European chocolate, and you know how smooth it can be because they really get it fine. You remove the fat, and then powder it, and get the cocoa that you can buy at the store. Here's the biology. The trees are about 10 or 15 feet tall, much like a coffee tree, and they grow in a rainforest environment. Oh boy.
This is my part.
Can you take that?
Okay, no. He said I should stand next to you so it gets recorded. Okay. These are the trees. They grow very similarly to coffee in the tropics, usually under a rainforest canopy of other trees over them. The trees are cacao is a really good crop if it can be grown, because it's a plant that doesn't have a harvest. It produces 12 months of the year. So you could pick the pods 12 months of the year rather than just in September or July or April or whenever they would become ripe. And so it makes for a nice steady crop and income. The pods are interesting. They're about the size of a football. Yeah. And they grow on the trunk and the branches of the tree. Not out on the ends like the almonds and the peaches and the apples do, but they grow right from the trunk of the tree. Different than most anything that we have seen. They also come in different colors. We haven't discovered why, at least in the reading we've done and the talking with people. There are oranges and reds and purples. It has nothing to do with the ripeness. It has nothing to do with the variety, because one tree might have 2 or 3 different colors on it. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, dear. So these are the cacao pods. I showed you the one up here. They're sometimes orange. Inside is this pulp, and inside each one of these is a cacao bean. And what occurs is really interesting chemistry, but no one knows really what's going on. Another view, this is a cross-section. The thing that's critical about the cacao tree is the leaves are about the size of a birch leaf, but the blossoms are so tiny. Only certain insects that are small can do any cross-fertilization so that you can get the cacao. This means that if you import cacao as a plant, you also have to import the insects to do the job, and most countries don't want more insects. This is a greatly enlarged picture of a midge. It looks like a mosquito, but they're so tiny you can barely see them. If you get to the big island of Hawaii, there's the original Hawaiian chocolate factory. They love company. The chocolate is $40 a pound, but they give you some free samples. These are the different colors that Sally was talking about. And behind him is a fermenter. Now, the ancients would have just piled up those seeds in the pulp and put some leaves on them and then let them ferment. But now we use this. That pulp must disappear. It ferments with the natural bacteria in the area, gets to a temperature of about 120 degrees for 5 to 7 days, and then cools down. That white material completely disappears, and you get cacao beans that will be coming around in a few minutes.
Okay, should we start? Okay. Okay, this is a large room. I'm going to start passing things out. And I think we'll go up the center aisle and just take some and pass it on to the next person and back. And somebody, Sally and Steve, maybe will collect them in the back and put them on the tables. This will be going on the rest of the talk. Now, what we're passing now are the roasted cacao seeds. Do not bite them. I'm serious. You can take them, you can take one home with you, don't bite them, look at them, sniff them a little bit. This is where your candy bar comes from.
And the cacao bean in the Aztec culture was money. It was used to pay tribute to the emperor, and also anything that you wanted to buy. A slave would cost 100 beans. So they're dried. Once that pulp disappears, they're dried like this, or the ancients on the ground. This was Scharfenberger in Berkeley. It's really an old coffee roaster, and again, another similarity with coffee. Much trade secret going on. What the gases were, what the temperature was, any pressure, and how long it went is kept as a trade secret within the various chocolate companies. Also at Scharfenberger, they had a winnower. And here's what you do is you crush the bean that you're going to be seeing and then blow away the shell because it's lighter and you can separate the shell. If you get to Hershey, Pennsylvania, they sell the shells as mulch. And if you want to have a sweet smelling area, go to western Pennsylvania or central Pennsylvania after a rain and you can't get away from it. This is in Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, and this is a manger to grind up those particles, and literally they grind them so fine they become a liquid. And I mentioned why that was so. So we're passing out the cacao beans. They're fermented and they're bitter, and
now we're going to pass the nibs. The nibs are what's inside that bean. Feel free to taste it. Do not take a spoonful. Take a couple of grains. They're a little they're a lot on the bitter side. We did this talk to a bunch of 4th and 5th graders a couple of years ago, and I didn't preface the talk with this statement. And the whole first row got up and ran out because the boys had taken a whole spoonful and had this in their mouth and didn't know what to do with it. So just take a little taste. These you can buy pretty much at some place like Whole Foods or some of the bigger grocery stores. I like them sprinkled on my cereal. Come to find out that the lady in the back there also likes them sprinkled on her oatmeal. So it gives it a crunch, it gives it a good flavor, and it's good for you. You'll find out about that later.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the beans that are going around. The next thing that's coming around are the nibs. And this is 99% cacao. It's about as pure as you're going to get. No sugar, no milk. That will also have white chocolate. And there's nothing good for you in white chocolate? I like it too, but everything good for you has been taken out in the dark material. The main use of this is for confections, and I'll go into this in just a minute. There's also baking chocolate you can get, and there is a baker's chocolate that it can be used for any baking purposes. We have milk chocolate with a small amount of cacao, and when you see that percentage on a chocolate bar, it includes the fat, the cocoa butter, but it's good fat. There's then semi-sweet, which has a higher percentage, and then we have bittersweet, which will also be coming by. So we have enough samples that people here will get at least one piece of chocolate. So these are the cacao beans, and the nibs look like this. The white chocolate looks like this, and it's mainly used in confections. I'm sure you recognize See's white chocolate. What do you think the secondary use of cacao butter is? The third is lotions. The second is suppositories. And take a look at Preparation H at your drugstore, and you'll find it's 90% cocoa butter. It melts at body temperature, and that's what you want. And then we have the lotions. If you don't eat any of the white chocolate, I will understand. So with the samples, I've gone through this list. As I said, from about 150 years, Spain had the monopoly and the trade secret for chocolate. What occurred during this period of time is that the Jewish traders in the area became the traders for chocolate or cacao. And the Inquisition occurred. So here's another part of history and the way that it changed. And they forced out the Jewish culture. They took their trade with them and they spread it to the rest of the world. So we have Dutch, the French, which will be coming around, German, and I'll go through all of these. The English and American colonies, we did have chocolate manufactured in Massachusetts before the Revolutionary War. So this is Conrad von Houten. How many people have had Dutch chocolate? Dutch chocolate. Well, Dutch means that you've added a little base to cut the acid. It makes it easier to process and it isn't quite as bitter. And this is what he did about 1810. We have French Valrhona. This is located in Lyon, France. We've been told that they have a tasting room that you can go in at 10 o'clock and stay till 5 and sample as much as you want. It's on our bucket list. And that's the samples that will be coming around, the 3 different varieties, the 60, 40, 60, and 73. German chocolate, I'm sure that you've seen these in the stores. Very common chocolate in Germany. Belgian chocolate. We usually think of Belgian chocolate as being Godiva. Who used to own Godiva chocolate?
Anybody know? Who owns Godiva chocolate?
Campbell Soup. They sold it about 5 years ago to the largest food producer in Turkey. And the only connection between Lady Godiva and Godiva chocolate is if you look very closely at the box, you may see a lady on a horse with a lot of hair.
So the headquarters of Godiva chocolate is in the country of Turkey, but it's still manufactured in the United States and other parts of Europe.
Okay. The Swiss are interesting in that they eat 22 pounds of chocolate per person per year. Do the math. That's about twice as much as people in the United States eat. And Nestle is one of the largest producers in Switzerland. Lindt is also there, and we also have Toblerone. I think I spelled it right finally. If you're familiar with the Willy Wonka series, that's owned by Nestle. And Lindt, this should have a sticker on it that says hazardous to your diet. And the Toblerone comes out of Neuchâtel. Switzerland, and they've been around for years, and I think people like the cute shape. The English Cadburys are interesting in that they were all Quakers. About 1750 to 1780, gin started being distilled from the juniper berries, very cheap alcohol. It was ruining families. So about 1800, the Cadburys, which were Quaker, decided that they would see if they could find another drink for the masses that would be not only cheaper but also nutritious. John Cadbury was the...
You mentioned about a drink for the masses. Chocolate at this point was still a drink. Maybe not the hot, frothy, hot chocolate we're used to, but more bitter and thicker. They had chocolate shops in Britain and in colonial Williamsburg. Like we have Starbucks on every corner, they had chocolate shops.
Okay. And the young people in England met at the chocolate shops and decided to talk about revolution, and the king closed them all down. We have Cadbury's. They're still in the United Kingdom. Roundtree was bought by Cadbury. Fry's was in Bristol, and they have moved to Poland for manufacturing, where they've been in Bristol for over 100 years for economic reasons. It's a very cutthroat industry. And in the American colonies, we have Baker in Massachusetts, and you can buy this at any supermarket. So the chemistry portion, I need to tell you there'll be no test, and they are recording this, so sometime if you come back to the website for the Modesto school, you should be able to find much of this if you can listen to it a second time.
Okay. Let's start with some real chocolate now. We're going to start with the milk chocolate, which Howard said could have, around 40% cacao in it, including the butter fat. These are Valrhona chocolates, which he mentioned earlier. We brought 200 pieces of the three varieties. Hopefully there's enough to go around to get everybody around the edges and everything so that you can have it. Here comes Sally with all the other chocolate. Thank you, but we're going to pass it back just like it is. Please only take one to make certain that other people have a chance in the back and on the sides to get some.
Okay, in the chemistry portion, you'll find that this type of structure on the left is called a xanthine. And it's found a number of places in nature. It's found in theobromine. Look at that same type of structure with these little groups on the edge. This is caffeine. Here they are together. You will see the only change is the caffeine has that group, and your body can tell the difference. If you have chocolate, you'll feel good. If you have coffee, you'll probably feel jittery. Can you kill? Do you feed chocolate to your dog? And why is that? They can get sick and they can die. Canines and felines do not have enough of an oxidase to remove the theobromine from the body, and it can build up to a toxic dose. Now, we're lucky in that it's size dose related. You wouldn't feed dark bitter chocolate to your Chihuahua. Not a good thing. But my daughter in Pasadena raises Great Danes. You cannot kill a Great Dane with chocolate. I know. I've tried. And this is theophylline, another of this group, and you'll find this in tea. All these are found in chocolate, but not very much. These are the building blocks of life, RNA and DNA, and there's the same type of structure, 6-membered ring, 5-membered ring, 4 nitrogens. And this is another building block, and who knows where guanine was first isolated 150 years ago? From guano, bird poop. I'll talk about amphetamines, and beta-phenylethylamine is one. There's small amounts of it in chocolate, but this is also an amphetamine, L-DOPA, used in Parkinson's disease, and they're actually feeding some patients dark chocolate in addition to see if they get a better effect, and dopamine. Epinephrine is adrenaline and its cousin norepinephrine, but beta-phenylethylamine is the one that's of interest. Sometime when young men or young women have a bad relationship, they binge on chocolate, and this may be the reason. You can figure this out. Years ago, when I was in chemistry, you could take this group and move it down and connect it here. If you do, you end up with a couple of steps. With this, add another amino acid and you get tryptophan. You find in milk a specific amino acid. You also find it in turkey. A couple more changes that your body can do. Hydroxyl group here, and change this at that point, and you get serotonin, which is one of the endorphins that's made in your brain. I'll not tell you how much dark chocolate you have to eat. You run your own experiment. And this is anandamide, just recently isolated in chocolate. Ananda in Sanskrit means bliss, and people in New Hampshire have identified this. They think this is the reason why people get runner's high. This is manufactured in the brain. Now the flavonoids, and this is part of the reason why chocolate is so healthy now. That basic structure of the catechins has these various groups on it called hydroxyl groups. They're OH groups similar to water, and the value of them is that they trap free radicals. Have you heard of mad cow disease and prions? Well, the reason they're so deadly is that they break down the cell walls so the cells don't operate anymore. And this traps them so that they're excreted.
They're all in those little itty-bitty nibs we just had? Mm-hmm. Every one of those?
Yes.
Different proportions for different types?
Yes.
Okay, how did they find them?
They isolated them.
They isolated them where?
Everywhere.
In a lab?
In a lab.
In a lab, in a chemistry lab.
And there are at least 500 different compounds.
Compounds in chocolate.
In chocolate. And there has been a study done by IBM and the Department of Agriculture and Mars. And you know what the genome is? They've created the genome for chocolate. So you may find a bar 10 years from now that'll have a circle on it that it's genetically prepared. This list of dark chocolate is one of the best things you can get for antioxidants. Milk chocolate, I guess they consider as adulterated. And then you go down to various fruits and vegetables that are useful. My wife likes chocolate-covered blueberries, so she'll be around for a while. These are some of the things you can find. Yes?
Okay, let's go now with the semi-sweet. This will have, 50 to 60% cacao. Now, did we have enough to go around? No. I'm sorry. Maybe we should start it on the side and move on to make it.
Okay. Chocolate or cacao has some really nice effects in the body. One is, as I've indicated before, antioxidant. It also helps modulate the HDL and HDL levels in your body, and it favors the HDL, and for those of us that are over 70, we like that. What are your resources? If you go to Google and put in chocolate, you'll get 500 million or 600 million hits. The first 5 pages are usually pretty good. You have books, movies, word of mouth, and taste. Like wine, no one can tell you what chocolate you're going to like. So if you want to learn more, get your favorite chocolate company, go to their website. Some of them have wonderful YouTubes showing chocolate being poured and molded. Some of them will have specials, and I'll go into that in a minute. But this is nationwide. And for those in California, the See's family, Ghirardelli, Guittard. Guittard is in Burlingame, and it's the chocolate supplier for See's, has been for years. Joseph Smith used to have very fine chocolate where they painted on it with food coloring, but it was bought by Hershey at the beginning of the recession in 2007, and they closed it down completely. Very high-end chocolate. And Scharfenberger, which is one of my favorites now, out of Berkeley, has been moved to downstate Illinois, again by Hershey. So I talked about Lady Godiva. Here are some of the others that we'll be talking about, at least have a little bit. Now we'll start some of the trivia. How many people have seen the movie E.T.? What was the candy that was followed back to the woodshed? Reese's Pieces. This is the best audience we've had. It was originally supposed to be M&M's. But Mars, the manufacturer, is private. So the agreement was made at a fairly low level, and when it got up to a higher level within the company, to a VP level, they decided they didn't want to be involved with a movie about a friendly alien and this director named Steven Spielberg. Big mistake. 4 weeks after E.T. premiered in 1980, the sales of Reese's Pieces around the country had quadrupled. I love a story with a happy ending. If you want a book about Milton Hershey, he is a very interesting man. Started this candy company, and almost all of the stock is owned by the foundation that he created that deals with a school for children in Hershey, and also a medical center created about 40 years ago. This one was written unauthorized and went into a lawsuit. It's all sold with that blue sticker indicating it's not sponsored by the Hershey Company. They didn't want them telling things like Mr. Hershey could be a drunk at times. He hired and fired people at will, and he liked to gamble.
And
His wife and he had tickets on the Titanic, but he had to come back early. There's a check in the museum.
that could have been on the Titanic.
Had to come back early because of a problem. If you want to get a book about chocolate for someone close, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand either the first edition, the second edition of True History of Chocolate, or the most recent one, the third edition. The Coes are wonderful social scientists at Yale. The wife died just about the time the first book came out of cancer, and he's continued to put out the second and third editions as a memorial to her. I really recommend this book. The Science of Chocolate came out of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and it turns out Stephen Beckett is a physicist working for Nestle in the UK. Now, he was primarily involved with melting, the snap, crystal structure, this sort of thing. And that's mostly what's in the book. And there aren't many of those organic structures that we saw earlier. Well, about 8 years ago, and I'll leave this, we reviewed the book for the National Chemical Society. And after reviewing it, I got his email, and I said, Stephen, there aren't enough organic structures in this. The melting is fine, but there's a lot of other things there. We like those structures. He emailed me back the next day and said, what do you think moved me into physics? There's a dark side of chocolate. These are the people that run the cartels and all of the things related to the transportation and movement of chocolate. There's an encyclopedia, much information. This comes out of UC Davis. Lots of information and really well documented, but not much chemistry, which was a surprise. This is Seeds of Change. We all know that when Columbus discovered America, he was interested in silver and gold, and indeed a lot of it went from the new country back to the old country. The book's purpose is to indicate it wasn't this that made the difference in Europe. It were the seeds that changed that continent. Corn and maize as we know it came from the New World, the potato, tomato, popcorn, and cacao. I like this particular book. The lady author says that in the beginning she finds there are people who say they don't like chocolate, and she soon finds they lie about other things too. This is a very nice book if you're into gourmet chocolate. I can recommend this. And this is a wonderful book written by a lady rabbi in New York City about the effect, the influence of the Jewish culture on the chocolate trade and what we know now. Really well done. So if you go to New York City, one side of Times Square will have a Mars store. Across the street will be a Hershey. And if you go to Las Vegas, you'll find the same thing. You want to tell your story about Whitman? Russell Stover sells over half the box chocolate in the country. So if you get someone a Mother's Day present, it's probably going to be Russell Stover.
Whitman samplers. Whitman samplers aren't our favorite chocolate, but hey, we eat anything. 2 years ago at Christmas time was the 100th anniversary of the Whitman sampler. Remember, this is the box that gives you the roadmap that tells you what you're getting, whether it's a chocolate-covered cherry or a nougat or a what, with a little design on it. Well, to celebrate the 100th anniversary, they put out a box that was this big. You know, packaging can be misleading. This only had 2.5 pounds of chocolate in it, in this very large box. So Howard had a luncheon to go to where they were going to do a gift exchange. And he's known for chocolate, so he usually takes chocolate. So we bought one of these Whitman samplers, one of the large ones, to be in the gift exchange. And of course it went like that. Well, I thought, here's Mr. Chocolate, he needs his own large Whitman sampler, so I bought him one for Christmas. Christmas morning, we're sitting around the Christmas tree with the grandchildren and the kids and everything, and we open this large box, just anticipating. Every chocolate in it was gray and ugly and squished looking. And we thought, I said, this sat in a UPS truck somewhere in July, Well, anyway, on the back of the box was a warranty. And it said, if you're not satisfied, call us. I did. I wasn't going to waste $24. Anyway, the lady, I told her, and the lady said, okay, your name, your address. I gave her the address, and she says, can you accept packages here? And I said, yeah. And she says, and we'll send you another one. And I said, but I don't think there are any. And I could hear her, on the computer in the background. She says, no, we have some. She says, now you'll get mail here. Who should we address the check to? They ended up sending us a refund check and a new box of chocolate. So this was an American company that really did stand behind their warranties. So I'm still not real fond of Whitman's, but a company that stands behind what they're selling in their warranties, I thought deserved a plug.
And she plugged it. Okay. This is the original Ghirardelli. He was in Santiago, Chile, dealing with chocolate, and his neighbor was a man named James Lick. Lick then moved to San Francisco in 1848 and soon messaged, they've discovered gold here, come up and make your fortune. Well, he was a terrible gold miner, but he also soon found that he could make chocolate, and those gold miners would separate from their gold very quickly for good chocolate. This is the iconic Ghirardelli Square. We only go up a few times. They do have a special program in September, but it's too touristy for us now. This is the original See's store in San Francisco. It's since been closed, but there are many others that opened. The original Mary See, yes, the family came from Canada, and she made those recipes for the chocolate are almost over 100 years old. Why would I have something about Charles Munger and Warren Buffett. You don't see them connected with chocolate very much. Well, it turns out they own See's Candy and have for years. They haven't messed with the formula. And Munger's wife went to Stanford, and they donated recently $60 million to put up a new dormitory for students to learn from each other. See's Candy. Oh, and Berkshire Hathaway also owns Dairy Queen.
That's one of my favorites.
Why would I have something about Baroness Margaret Thatcher? I'm sure you've seen the Iron Lady movie, which was not her writings, but was taken mostly from her daughter's book. But here she's accepting a 2 or 3 pound box of See's chocolate. It turns out her original degree was in chemistry from Oxford. She worked for a lady who, Dorothy Crowfoot Hodgkin, who later won the Nobel Prize for crystallography. Her problem was one that was solved 30 years after she was there, but it turns out that Margaret Thatcher's first job was in an ice cream plant dealing with the crystallization of chocolate. She then married someone who was a feed and paint and chemical manufacturer, Dennis, and she went to Knight Law School and got her law degree. Originally she was going to do it in patent law, but it was too slow. She ended up in international relations. Well, I share a number of things with this lady: an undergraduate degree in chemistry, a law degree at Knight, marriage in a Methodist church, and a birthday. When she had her 80th birthday in London several years ago, I wasn't invited and she heard about it. How many people remember this? Yeah. The iconic I Love Lucy program, Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance, they were switching jobs. The husbands were going to do the homework and they were going to go out and get jobs. Well, this was in Pasadena. The plant has since been closed.
The See's plant.
It's the See's plant. But that lady was a member of the staff at that plant, and she's the one who kept yelling, "Speed up that line." And you never know where it can going to go. This from black and white TV programs, and there they are, chocolate on a stamp. And when Hershey had their 100th anniversary of Kisses in 2007, they got their own stamp, and postage has gone up since then. Percy Spencer invented the microwave oven. He'd be involved with a connection and a trivial connection with chocolate. Well, it turns out he was a self-taught genius in electronics, dealt with radar and sonar and the Klystron tube, which had been developed at Stanford. And when he put this particular circuit together and activated it, the chocolate bar in his pocket melted. We do not ask what happened to his heart and lungs. He sent out for popcorn, and it popped. He sent out for eggs, and they exploded. The company was an old company called Raytheon. You may still find them around in the East, and they marketed it to high-end restaurants and to high-end supermarkets. And when all the patent rights ran out, the company considered it to be a complete economic failure.
The microwave.
The microwave. And what it shows is our patent system can work because when the patent rights ran out, anyone could improve on it and anyone could sell it without fear. So now we have cheap, inexpensive microwave ovens in 95% of the homes in the United States. This is more of the trivia. Go on the webs and see if they have specials. This was about 10 years ago. $2 and 25 wrappers for a sweatshirt. By the time it was finished, I had 26 sweatshirts. How many people have seen the movie The Notebook? This comes from The Notebook. I happen to like this, but we're not sure about Utah. If they know the connection between caffeine and theobromine.
We're going to go.
Okay.
Okay. Bittersweet. I think this is 73% cacao. A little dark for me. It's very good.
Okay. And if you're in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, in October, there is a church in Belmont, California, that we call the Chocolate Church. They have a weekend chocolate tasting for $20. It's all the chocolate you can eat in 2.5 hours. They know us on site and they never make any money. This is the church, and really a fun place. This has nothing to do with what's in chocolate. It's marketing. The letters come out right. And here's for the original Hawaiian Chocolate Factory I mentioned before. Really a fun place if you get to Kona. There is a chocolate Bible. And my wife has this. Could be worse. And you can't read the fine print, but she tells me it will only be for fine chocolate. So. If you get ARP, and yes, we get ARP and have for years, this is the insert. Sally thinks the number is really a lot higher than that. And I didn't get this for her, she got it for me. There are people in Hollywood that love chocolate. This is the old Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory that came out in the 70s. I happen to like this version better than the one with Johnny Depp. This is Johnny Depp's version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And he also did this in chocolate with Chocolat with Benet. You'll remember that if you saw this movie that the chocolate had wonderful side effects because the chocolate had extra ingredients. It turns out it was pepper. Cayenne pepper and chili pepper in certain and the lady was from Central America. Well, I've been able to find in Palo Alto this Mayan chocolate, and it does have chili pepper and cayenne pepper in it. It has an interesting finish. It's with you for a while. But when I told the Chemical Society I was going to have this as one of the prizes, they insisted I have a waiver and disclaimer. They didn't want to be responsible for any of the side effects. So I stopped doing that. Now, chocolate and coffee go well. Chocolate will go well with almost anything. It does not go well with tea. It just overwhelms the flavor. And don't do this at home. The flavor of sauerkraut and chocolate are not enhanced in one bit. There's no improvement. So what can you do with this? Well, about 10 years ago, I became a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And I showed my wife the card. Now, you have to understand, she's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, an ironworker's daughter, and it's tough to impress her. She took one look at this card that said Royal Society, and she said, it was the second thing royal about you. The first is pain. I countered with, maybe she'd call me Sir Howard. Nope, not going to happen. But she left the door open, and she said if we went to London and came back on the Queen Mary 2, she might consider it. 3 weeks later, the California 3As had a special $1,400 for a balcony on the Queen Mary 2, so we went to London, had a great time, came back. Really a lot of fun, but be careful what you pray for. Your prayers may be answered. I do now get Sir Howard take out the trash. While we were on the Queen Mary, I noticed that they had wine tastings, beer tastings, whiskey tastings, but nothing about chocolate. So I wrote to the cruise director, the Captain Stubing of the Princess. And he wrote back and said, interesting idea, get a hold of these people in Southampton. So I wrote them. I know they got it because they asked for an electronic photo. And I figured it all went into a file that would never be opened. But in about March of 2007, I'm retired, and Sally's still working, and I'm at my computer, and the phone rings, and the conversation went something like this. Hello, are you Howard Peters? Yes. Do you and your wife talk about chocolate? Yes. Well, this is Cunard calling from Southampton. We have an emergency. Can you be in New York City in 48 hours for a 10-day free cruise in the Caribbean on the Queen Mary 2 and talk chocolate? Yes, I can do that. So they started sending things about, passports and that. I called Sally and I said, I'm retired. I just don't know if you're going to be able to get off for 10 days. Her answer was, do you think for 1 minute you're going to go alone? So we went, had a great time, have talked about chocolate on the Queen Mary 2, and we even clean up pretty good for the captain. So, yeah, it's been a while. So if you have new members coming into your family, children or grandchildren, Hershey's has licensed this. In 24 hours, you can get this prepared and delivered to you, which is all the details. And yes, it covers my daughter and her husband, Ramesh Bhatt. His father is from India, and his mother's Hispanic from Texas, and they're Baptist. Interesting combination. And I also have a second granddaughter. And here they are. And this is 10 years ago. We're trying to teach them that the best tasting chocolate is shared chocolate, but I don't think they're buying it. We did give the talk in Hershey, and we may be there in June this year, and you can't buy any other chocolate in Hershey except Hershey. So what are the takeaways from a talk like this? One is beware of false teachings. The older people here will remember carob when it was supposed to be good for you and chocolate wasn't. And always remember the best tasting chocolate is shared chocolate. These are the acknowledgments, and we're ready. Make